After his quest to retrieve the orb and the sceptre, the rightful ruler has returned. But all is not well in the city of Irsmuncast Edge, for an army of foes, spawn of the rift, have risen up and assaulted the city. Not only that, but rumour has it they are marshalled by one ancient foe, an old enemy. Sorcerak, the leader of the Legion of the Sword of Doom, has brought death and destruction to this fair city, and it is up to the ruler to defend it. But he is no mere mortal politician. This is Avenger. He is ninja, and he follows the way of the tiger. I am Ninja. My parents are the heaven and the earth. My home is my body. My power is loyalty. My magic is training. My life and my death is breathing. My body is control. My eyes are the sun and the moon. My ears are sensitivity. My laws are self-protection. My strength is adaptability. My ambition is taking every opportunity with fullness. My friend is my mind. My enemy is carelessness. My protection is right action. My weapons are everything that exists. My strategy is one foot in front of the other. My trust is in quality. My way is the way of the tiger. Hello everybody, I'm Raphael Perry, and it's time for some more of The Way of the Tiger. And picking up from the last video, yes, I did go and check for reprints, and they have added a total heal to section 159, which is after the return to Irsmuncast. I think it's the section where the elf archers turn up. Let's have a look, actually. 159. They've added a single sentence in bold at the bottom of the paragraph, which is, if you are wounded, restore your health to 20 endurance points. Fair enough. We've been back in the city for a number of weeks, and it makes absolute sense for our wounds to have healed, especially as we have magical healers available in the city. They may not be very powerful, they might not be able to do much healing, but with the rest and the time and the fact that we are the single most important person in the city, it would make sense that our health would be a high priority. So taking that into account, I am going to restore my endurance from 2 to 20. I'm not going to restore anything else. So now we find ourselves here at section 269. Additionally, I've written down the original core army that we started with, which is 1,800 shield maidens of Dharma, 800 of whom are cavalry, 3,500 approximately remnants of the usurper's army, orcs and humans loyal to Nemesis, all infantry, and about 10,000 peasant militia, rounded up by the demagogue, who ignored the fact that we didn't give him permission to start a peasant's militia. Our additional forces, to bolster our number, 2,000 shield maidens of Dharma, led by Hivatala,
including 500 cavalry. 1,000 swordsmen of the army of myriad possibilities, followers of Beatan. Glavis and 20 rangers. 200 wood elf archers. The white wizard, who dresses all in white robes and has a tall white pointed hat. I mean, with him on our side, things have got to be looking up. And Dore Lejeune and 4 of his companions, all paladins of Rocheval, on horseback, very powerful. We'll need to be careful where we send them and not to waste them sending them to the wrong place. Because if I remember anything, the battle is about logistics and organisation and getting units into the correct places where they can do the right job, because if they're in the wrong place, it might take them a long time to get back to where they need to go. Additionally, I remember a farm over on the right-hand side of the battlefield that was... It wasn't pivotal in the battle, but I seem to remember needing to send the Chaos Worshippers of Beatan to defend the farmstead, to take and hold the farmstead and fight there. I believe my rationale was that as chaotic warriors, less organised, the Shield Maidens of Dharma will be used to fighting in the open. Peasant Militia, they'll be pretty disorganised as well. But the followers of Beatan, as chaotic warriors, will be good at ducking in and out of buildings, because it's not about... It's less about keeping the enemy out of the farm and more about using the farm as defensive cover. Possibly baiting the army out to attack it. Additionally, if I just scroll back up here to the previous page, I seem to remember that if I encounter the section that features this illustration, I'm on the right path and haven't messed up the battle. That is, I seem to remember this picture from successful playthroughs and associate it with victory, even though it looks like some guys are having a pretty hard time. Alright, here we are. Let's pick up where we left off. At the final council of war, you must decide how to split your troops. You will need a very strong force to stand a chance of defeating Honoric, but at the same time, as soon as you march out to do battle, the forces from the Rift will lay siege to the city, so you must leave troops behind to defend it. If you stay where you are, the enemy forces will unite outside your walls. If, as Gwyneth suggests, you feel that this is the most sensible strategy, then you're going to settle in for a siege, and the two enemy armies probably are not going to fight each other, and we will be massively overwhelmed and defeated. Lackland, the leader of the troops who were once the Usurper's army, and High Priest at the Temple of Nemesis, suggests that you leave behind the citizen militia and perhaps 1,000 followers of Dharma to strengthen their backbone. Now, we only have just under 3,000 Shield Maidens of Dharma. If we didn't have the additional ones, we'd only have about 2,000, and 3,500 and 10,000 members of the Peasants' Militia. He wants us to leave all of those behind. I'll come back to that idea. Antostas scowls at Lackland and says that he recommends leaving Lackland and his 3,500 troops, who he values less highly than Gwyneth's 2,000, to strengthen them. The demagogue urges you to split your forces into two, leaving half to defend the city. Whose advice will you follow? That of Lackland, Antostas, or the demagogue? Right, so... First things first... We denied Lackland's advice before... Antostas' advice before. Now may be the time to follow it, to make up, so that we don't consistently refuse him, right? He's got to be good at something. He's an experienced, trained mercenary. He's not a soldier. So his loyalty is to coin. But he does have the experience of many, years in the military. Gwyneth wants to defend against a siege. I don't think this is the best idea, because I seem to remember this is a pitched battle at the end of the book anyway. Now, Lackland the High Priest of the Temple of Nemesis, who has already been calling himself General Lackland, even though we have not given him that title. And if anything, Gwyneth or Antocitus would be more entitled to call themselves a general. Probably Gwyneth, given the amount of power and trust we have placed within her, but we don't want to do too much here, right? So, Lackland is suggesting we leave all 10,000 of the peasant militia behind, and half, or a third, of the shield maidens of Dharma. This would leave us on the battlefield with the chaotic swordsman, followers of Beatan, Glavis and the rangers, the wood elf archers, the white wizard, Dore Lejeune and his 4 companions, and 3,500 soldiers, all loyal to the Temple of Nemesis and Lackland. And the Temple of Nemesis has been the bane of our existence. They've had it in for us since the very beginning. And while Lackland is not his predecessor, who was a very high-ranking aide to the usurper, and who threatened to kill us and may have even attempted to assassinate us had we not dealt with him the way we did. And he claims to be a different individual. He will have a similar sort of overall worldview due to his high-standing membership of the same religious organization. And he's advising us to leave our strongest allies behind and our most numerous force. Now, I've arranged these this way for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's the order in which they are depicted in the text. The Shield Maidens of Dharma are the most skilled and most disciplined warriors in our army, in terms of units only, right? They are the ones who are likely to hold ground if they're taking heavy losses, are likely to, fight more effectively. They are courageous and organized, and will pay attention to orders and do what they're told. The remnants of the usurper's army are a chaotic, disorganized rabble. We disbanded their army, so they're not going to be very loyal to us. The fact that they all worship the evil temple who wants us killed means that it might not be wise for them to make up the bulk of our force standing around us on the battlefield when the evil army comes for us. He's suggesting, so he wants us to leave the best warriors behind, and the peasant militia are going to be even worse than the usurper's army. But there are rather a lot of them. They may break and scatter if they start taking losses early on. Like, it would take heavy losses to break the Shield Maidens of Dharma. They'd need to be overwhelmed or overrun, or panicked for some reason. The peasants, they might lose 2,000 or 3,000 and start running, whereas the 1,800 Shield Maidens of Dharma here might need to go down to about 400 before they would break and flee, right? So, Shield Maidens of Dharma, top tier, the remnants of Usurper's army, middle tier, and the Peasants' Militia, bottom tier, but about 3 times as many as the middle tier units. We may be able to use the peasants somewhere important, and I think that picture is something to do with peasants defending the ford, where they're going to be outnumbered and outclassed, but using the defensive terrain will help them hold up for a bit, and we'll need to go reinforce them with people while dealing with stuff on the flanks. Additional forces, 2,000 Shield Maidens of Dharma, including 500 cavalry. So we have a total of about 1,300 cavalry. These are very large numbers, but I can assure you the enemy army is a legion. And if there's one thing the word legion makes you think of, it's a lot of them. A very large number. They will obviously outnumber us and probably outskill us when it comes to the peasant militia. Not necessarily the Shield Maidens of Dharma, probably a bit more effective than the remnants of Usurper's army. We have 1,000 swordsmen of the army of myriad possibilities. They hate the Legion of the Sword of Doom, who are worshippers of Vash Ro, and Bayatan and Vash Ro are enemies, so they will fight fanatically and ferociously. They may have less training and fight in a less organised manner. So, here's an interesting thing, right? Spartacus, his gladiatorial revolt against the Roman legions, it failed for a number of reasons, but two rather important ones are that the legionnaires were trained to fight together as a group, and the gladiators were trained to fight in single combat or, small group fights. They were trained to fight individually on their own and not rely on allies. And while they had a higher level of skill than the legionnaires, they just didn't have the coordination, so they didn't work together very well as a fighting force. And that is one of the main reasons they were defeated, at least so I was told at school when I was a little boy. Well, I wasn't told, the whole class was. Anyway, I wasn't that little actually, we were all about 12 at the time, maybe younger. Anyway, so Glavis and 20 rangers and the 200 wood elf archers. I imagine we're not going to be able to split those wood elves up into separate groups and put to harass and harry our foes, and that we're only going to be allowed to send them to one place, and we're likely to send Glavis and the rangers with them rather than to a separate location, because 20 rangers on their own, while heavily skilled. Okay, this is based on AD&D first edition, or even basic, like purple box, maybe red. Nah, I think it's a bit before red box, isn't it? Anyway, no, it might be after red box. But essentially that means if it's AD&D and not basic D&D, first edition, then the rangers are very good at fighting large groups of low-level enemies of the non-human variety. Any sort of greenskins, orcs, goblins, hobgoblins, anything related to that. I mean, even kobolds. Because against those foes, they would gain a number of attacks per level equal to, a number of attacks per round equal to their level when fighting against such lesser foes. So they could mop up large groups very quickly. The White Wizard will probably be used tactically in specifics. I can see something there on the opposite page being important, so let's try not to look at that. And Doré Lejeune and the four companions, the Paladins of Rocheval, they're going to hit like a truck, but if we send them to the wrong place, they won't be able to redeploy in time if they are needed elsewhere, so we'll need to be a little cautious about how we use them. So, taking all of this into consideration, Lackland is suggesting that we put everyone valuable, a lot of the shield maidens and all the peasant militia inside the city, so that it's just him and his guys helping us. Because all this stuff is optional, right? And if we put 10,000... Okay, so what do we got? 2, 5.5, 15.5, 17.5, 18.5, 90, so 20,000. We've got about 20,000 soldiers, right? If we put 11,000 of our 20,000 soldiers back in the city, that's almost what the demagogue is saying, where the demagogue wants us to put half the army behind in the city. Now, I understand where he's coming from here, right? I really do. Defending the city is important. However, if we do well in the battle, we can return to defend the city. And if we leave too many soldiers behind in the city, we will lose in the battle. We probably can't afford to leave half behind. And we can't afford to leave half our army and a significant portion of our strongest troops behind either. And Tossidus, the experienced warlord, is saying, leave Lackland and his evil thugs behind in town. Now, the only disadvantage of this is that if we leave the city defended by no one other than the usurper's army, they might just open the gates and let the forces of the Rift in, because they hate us that much and want evil to rule the city once again. However, they know that we would absolutely punish them for this upon our return. There is another thing to think about. We're riding out to do battle with Honoric and the Legion of the Sword of Doom. Oh, wait. I think we have a duplicate section here. It makes sense now. And the forces of the Rift are likely to come. They're advancing on the city to lay siege on the city while we do battle with Honoric. Now the thing is, if we lose, Honoric and his army will come and take the city anyway. So we don't need to meet him a long way away from the city. We can meet him near the city walls, not necessarily within sight of the city walls. We just locate a good battlefield. That is a good location for us to use. Which means that theoretically we won't be far away from the city, and whoever wins the battle can go back to the city. So I'm not going to follow Lackland's advice, because even if he doesn't hate us and actively want to get rid of us, he's advising we leave far too many forces behind. Now, it's not as if he's advising we leave the peasant militia behind out of the goodness of his heart, because he's scared they might get hurt in the fighting. It's because he's not taking our allies into consideration, because we could have either groups, any group of allies, right? They're different groups and possibilities. So he's basically getting rid of everyone, all the peasant militia and, half the shield maidens of Dharma. So basically, he's making sure that anyone who's not a member of the usurper's army is off the battlefield. And he's letting us keep some token, heavily reduced version of the shield maidens of Dharma, so that they don't suspect something, and we're like, okay, no, we still got some here, that's good. That's bad. Even if he doesn't turn against us, the remnants of the usurper's army are a disorganized rabble, a chaotic mess. Now, the peasant militia are even more of a mess, with less morale, less training, but more loyalty to us. The remnants of the usurper's army cannot be described as loyal to us. They can be described as loyal to Lackland. And the demagogue is saying leave exactly half of everything back inside the city. Well, from what I remember, the forces coming from a rift to the south are not necessarily the same size as the army of the Legion of the Sword of Doom, and we chased away and prevented some members of the army of the Rift moving to reinforce the Legion of the Sword of Doom, something which will hopefully be to our advantage later on. And while the main body of them is still marching towards the city... Hang on, though. And Tossidus was also suggesting we go out and fight the forces of the Rift first, so that we only have one... because We outnumber them, can crush them and defeat them, we'll take some losses, then come back. And he's not advising that anymore. He's just advising leave the Nemesis worshippers behind and take everyone else. You know what? I think Gwyneth would agree with him there if she wasn't so set on defending a siege. I'll take the advice of Antocitus. With a great parade and much tearful leave-taking, you lead out your army in full panoply of war. Gwyneth gives you a magnificent white charger and you cut a right royal dash, riding out at the head of your troops with your sceptre and your glowing green emerald eye. Unfortunately, the crow scouts of your enemies see you coming and the rift forces draw back even as Honoric advances from the other direction. You cannot chase them down into the bowels of Orb, for your troops would be hopelessly disadvantaged in the maze of catacombs and caverns in the rift. Honoric, however, will never retreat, regarding it as dishonourable, so after another council of war, you decide to march against his forces instead, which is what we were going to do anyway. So now, we don't need to worry about defending the city, so in theory, we could take everyone with us. But I think we should still consider the serious possibility that we're leaving the worshippers of of Nemesis behind. Now, this, I believe, is a duplicate section. Earlier, when we had the option of taking Antocitus' advice, I believe it directs to this section, and essentially, because we spend so long chasing away the spawn of the rift, we don't get the Wood Elf Archers, the White Wizard, or the Paladin, and just have to go into the battle without them. So the way we've done things has hopefully helped us out. I can check that again off screen later on, but I think that is the case. So Antocitus' first advice skips a lot of useful allies and goes straight to the battle, whereas taking, I believe it was what's her name? Gwyneth's advice, let us get some extra allies. At last you march to meet Honoric, the man who has done so much to try to encompass your doom. You have cautioned the demagogue to watch Lackland like a hawk and to defend the walls staunchly until you return victorious. Unskilled troops are far more useful behind city walls than in the battlefield, and it takes a sizable superiority in numbers to take a walled city by storm. But we aren't leaving the demagogue and all his peasant militia behind. Just maybe the demagogue on his own, because he's not suited to the battlefield. Which means he may be assassinated in our absence. Or, am I wrong? Was Antocitus' advice to leave the peasant militia and the remnants of Usurper's army behind, instead of leaving a load of the shieldmaids of Dharma and the peasant militia behind? I don't think so. You make a fine array of troops, foot soldiers, cavalry, archers, magicians, priests, and healers, with as rearguard Glavus, his rangers, and the paladins, including Dore Lejeune. After 5 days' march, your scouts tell you that you are nearing Honoric's force, which outnumbers your own. Morale is good, and you decide to give battle. You make camp outside the village of Beach Bridge, in the valley of the River Fortune, and tell your commanders to see that your troops want for nothing, and are well rested for tomorrow. The information you have about Honoric's force and its dispositions are fairly meagre. Will you put on an eye patch to conceal the glowing orb and do some scouting yourself, or save your energy and rest well before the battle tomorrow? Now, I just want to be clear, Section 342 does not contain any healing. It would be tempting to imagine it would contain some healing if we were wounded at this point. And honestly, with the 2 endurance points I had at the end of the last episode, I would have seriously considered this option, but I would have known that pretending to be King Henry V and going out and sneaking among the soldiers, the enemy soldiers' mind, so even more dangerous, is probably going to reveal vital information about the battle to come. So, let us do that. and as we see the battle maps flying past, we'll just be paying more attention to them in the future. You ride on ahead of your troops. Soon you come to the valley where your scouts reported a sighting of Honoric's army. You continue up it, following a winding river, the River of Beasts, that flows through the valley. You pass by a village on the left as you leap a small stream. As dusk falls, a manor house appears ahead. It seems deserted, and as you rein in your horse, you see the reason why. A half-mile beyond, a great army is settling down for the night's camp. The rosy glow of the setting sun seems to set aflame the gleaming steel of 15,000 spears, and the sound of many men bivouacking fills the evening air. As you watch, your spirit sinks at the sight of such a mighty army. You recognize banners not only of Doomover, but of the cities of Averneg, Greygilds, Mortavalon, and others. Honoric has been hard at work. A powerful alliance of cities is ranged against you. You must try to learn more. I thought we had allies from Averneg and Seracube, because we got some extras, didn't we? But let's look at this for a moment, okay? Doomover, Grey Guilds on the moor, Mortavalon, where the necromancers are, and the gladiatorial combat arena, and others. It's Averneg, which looks a bit like Avenge, doesn't it? In fact, it really does if you just swap the last two letters. It's possible we may remember something about those factions. If there are some who do not agree well with each other and are placed next to each other in battle, I don't think they're going to turn against each other like orcs and goblins, but it may lower their morale if they're having to rely on people they don't like very much and like, oh, what's he doing here? He's useless. You know, we have to work with these guys. You know, so anything we should pay attention to. Any clues, right? You decide to wait until night has fallen before stealing into the camp. There you can procure the uniform of one of the soldiers and wander around with impunity. There is much to be learned from campfire gossip, as well as the class and number of troops you will be facing in battle. Night falls and heavy clouds obscure the moon. Ideal weather for one such as you. You steal forwards, unseen and unheard, pleased to exercise after so long those skills at which you excel. You come to the camp's outpost, a circle of pickets. Ahead of you, 2 guards with spears and chainmail surcoats stand warming themselves around a small fire. You crouch at the edge of the firelight. If you act quickly enough, you may be able to disable both without being spotted. Will you creep up behind them, throw some flash powder on the fire and then attack? That would be very nice, but I have not been able to replace my flash powder since book 2. I could have bought more than one, but I don't think I'm necessarily allowed to have more than one at a time. Creep forwards and spit a poisoned needle if you have that skill. I do not have that skill. Hurl a shuriken at one, or creep up behind and attack them from behind. Here's the thing. If I throw a ninja star at one of them, I then need to close ground to the second to deal with him before he can react. If I'm standing right next to them both and I knock one of them out, the other one will have less time to react and will have to deal with me, and it'll be less likely he can raise the alarm. So I'll go to section 52. And hope that sneaking up closer will be okay. You creep forward stealthily. They have still not heard you when you stand centimeters behind one of the guards. You unleash a crippling tiger's paw punch at the guard's exposed neck, and he goes down like a sack of potatoes. The other wheels around in astonishment, a cry of alarm on the tip of his tongue. You have only an instant in which to silence him as you step forward and execute a leaping tiger kick. His defense is 7. We can hit him or miss. If we miss, we're probably dead, and I probably shouldn't have said that. However, 2 dice plus 2. We shall kick. 8 plus 2 is 10. Excellent stuff. That is a good start, and we're on sections ending in 2 now. Your kick is well judged. The ball of your foot takes him on the chin, snapping his head back and bowling him over, where he lies on the grassy earth, inert. More importantly, we could have kicked him in the throat and rendered him incapable of screaming. Yes, screaming. That's shouting and screaming at the same time. Hurriedly, you don the armour and surcoat of one of the guards. You are now dressed as a swordsman of Vash Row from the Legion of the City of Avenger. I'm going to make a note of that, because anybody we meet may have their own disposition towards the City of Avenger. 122. Let's sneak on. Unnoticed, you thread your way through the campfires among soldiers of many cities who are laughing and joking for the most part. It seems confidence is high. Then you come to a campfire where a loud argument is raging between a woman warrior, whom you recognize as a follower of the goddess Felkirinla, the man-hater from the city of Horngrove, and one of the men from the Legion of the Sword of Doom from Doomover. An officer comes over to intercede between the two antagonists. Before the two antagonists come to blows, you can see there is no love lost between these allies. So, we can expect the worshippers of Felkirinla to be unlikely to cooperate with the Legionnaires of the Sword of Doom. Oh, specifically from Doomover. This may be important because if we pay attention to how from Horngrove, women of Horngrove, yeah, right, okay. If he puts them next to soldiers from Doomover, that would be a mistake, and he should know better than that as an experienced general, but it's the kind of mistake that may be made to give us a chance. Let's continue. You find yourself standing near a group of men discussing the strength of their allies. These men are from Honoric's own troops, the Legion of the Sword of Doom from Doomover. They regard themselves as elite warriors, the best in the man march, and you know this is probably true. They regard the women of Horngrove as sound fighters but untrustworthy. Their discussion goes on to the men of the Legions of Avaneg and the Spires, regular troops but not as good as themselves. The group then derides the Doomover levies, 4,000 men well armed but of poor quality. They seem to have particularly strong contempt for these, the militia of their city, which means so it's like orcs and goblins, right? The orcs don't care about the goblins getting hurt because they think of the goblins as weaker and unimportant and not very good. So the levies are likely to be unsupported There's only 1V in levies. That's an easy mistake to make, isn't it? So unsupported, and the Legion are probably worse than they are, right? Because the Legion are used to being... Sorry, the levies are used to being bullied by the Legion. And constantly told you're a failure, you're rubbish, you're nothing. So they may have low morale and crumble early if they start taking heavy losses and find they are unsupported by their allies. You are mulling over the implication of what you have heard when a loud voice sounds in your ear. An officer of the Doomover Legion is addressing you. "What are you, an Avenger legionary, doing here away among the campfires of the Legion of the Sword of Doom?" he cries harshly. "You know it is out of bounds for the likes of you." Some of the nearby soldiers look up with curious faces. You will have to talk your way out of this one. What will you say? "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I seem to have lost my way. I was looking for the camp quartermaster. We didn't need more salt beef rations." I have messages from the Captain General of the Avenger Legion for Lord Honoric, sir. Or, "I am looking for a priest of Vash Ro to preside over a religious ceremony for my troop of the Avenger Legion." Right. Surely there'll be priests stationed throughout the camp. If I tell them I've got an important message for Lord Honoric, the danger is they might actually take me straight to him. Or they might think this is a major security breach and not trust me. If I pretend to be some idiot who's lost his way, and if I say we need more rations, they might not know how many rations we have in our part of the camp, so this is a more believable lie. So, "I am sorry, sir, I seem to have lost my way. I was looking for the camp quartermaster. We need more salt beef rations." Let's hope that works. Because if it doesn't, I could be in deep trouble. "Well, you're way off course, soldier," he says. "The quartermaster's stores are near Lord Honoric's tent over there." And he points away to the left. Thanking him, you press on in the indicated direction. You come to a large open area at the centre of which rests a massive red pavilion adorned with sword symbols of Vash Ro, obviously the tent of Honoric, for it is also surrounded by guards. A curiously indeterminate figure in grey robes approaches the pavilion. As he is about to enter, you feel a strange itching in your eye socket where the green orb seems to pulsate under the eye patch. Quickly you lift the patch. The vision revealed is of something strange and inhuman entering the pavilion, but there is not enough time to determine exactly what, even though there's blatantly a picture of a great big octopus-headed, tentacle-headed, mind flare-looking monster on the front cover that is very similar to the old one from book 3. You're taking a terrible risk just standing near Honoric's pavilion, so you move on. You've decided that there is little more you can learn when you come across an open clearing to the rear of the camp. 3 huge wooden boxes with slat-like windows tightly closed are resting side by side. The boxes are reinforced with thick bands of iron, and their doors are bolted shut with great iron bars. Strange shuffling and other indeterminable sounds emanate from the boxes. The orb is glowing in your socket, registering the presence of magic here. Will you examine the nearest box, or decide the whole thing is too dangerous and return to your own army? This seems like important knowledge I should have. I'm going to take the risk, even though it's likely to be very dangerous. As you approach the nearest box. It is dark here and no one is about. The boxes seem unguarded, save for a small, unmarked tent nearby. Carefully, you climb the side of the box, slide back one of the small windows and look inside. 3 things happen simultaneously. You gasp in surprise at what you see inside. A huge reptilian beast, a wyvern to be precise, a small patch of its iridescent scales glowing in the shaft of moonlight that streams in through the open window, lies asleep. The orb seems to twitch as if some magic spell has been cast, and a great distant clanging fills the air. A magical alarm! The wyvern awakes, thrashing its huge barbed tail, and growls menacingly as you jump to the ground. Looking around, you see the immediate vicinity coming alive, and a man in robes, obviously a magician, erupts from a nearby tent, crying, "The wyverns! Someone is at the wyverns!" You have no choice but to try and escape. You turn tail and flee, but the alarm is raised. You run through the darkness, using all your skills to avoid groups of blundering searchers. Then, directly ahead of you, a line of legionnaires appears in the gloom. They are being marshalled into order by several officers prior to beginning a systematic search. Will you run straight at them? Probably not. Break off and cut to the left, or duck into the nearest tent. Let's duck into a tent, because we could walk out of the tent casually. You burst into the tent. Inside, a soldier with a bowl of steaming broth in front of him gawps at you in astonishment. Quickly you leave with a muttered apology. A long line of soldiers is moving towards you. Nearby, a cart loaded with weapons and other gear rests next to a large siege engine. Will you dart into the shadows of the engine, run to the left as fast as you can, or run straight at the line of warriors? That's running to the left again. That was an option before. Is this the same paragraph? I think there's a risk of being captured if I'm too close, if they search the siege engine too thoroughly, but if they just march past it and keep it, depends on if I'm, how dark the shadows are. It is nighttime after all. Using the shadows nearby rather than running at high speed, moving quickly could draw attention. So 252. You crouch, hidden, your breathing as quiet as the grave and your body unmoving. The line of searchers passes past you without finding you. You wait for the furore to die down, and you are just thinking it is safe to come out when a sound alerts you. Suddenly the orb glows once more, indicating the use of magic. Then somebody nearby gasps in surprise, and you realize a magician is using magic to find you. You leap up, and a young sorcerer of Nemesis, it would seem, stands before you, momentarily surprised. You must silence him before he gives the alarm. You drive an iron fist punch in his face. His defense is 7. We'll just have to punch. And 9 plus 1 is 10. We punch him. That's great. We needed that. We really did. A single blow knocks the magician to the ground. He goes out like a light. The sounds of the search are no longer in earshot, and it is a simple matter to make your way out of the camp unseen. You melt away into the night, heading back to the safety of your own forces. Whew. If we hadn't knocked him out, we could have been in deep trouble there. You find your army encamped near the village you passed when you first came up the valley. This is where the battle will be fought on the morrow. You go to your tent immediately to catch what sleep you can before dawn, when you will meet your commanders and advisors to decide a strategy. Turn to section 342, which I think is the one we would have originally turned to if we hadn't decided to sneak into the camp. I'm making a note of the wooden crates containing wyverns. It may be important. You know what? Honoric has 3 wooden crates containing wyverns. There we go. You know what? I'm feeling a bit tense and I'm reckoning it might be a good time to end narratively before the battle. Dawn breaks. Examine the map opposite. Currently, your army is encamped along the green ridge and tall hill. As the sun rises, you can see a stream of village refugees hurrying over the old bridge and down the road. The reason is obvious. Sprawled around the manor house is the army of Honoric, the leader of the Legion of the Sword of Doom. Their lines stretching from Sordon, Freeman's Farm, to Squire's Hill. Your scouts, Glavis's Rangers, are out at the stream, as are the scouts of the Legion. Soon they will return with news. You begin issuing orders to bring all of your commanders together for a council on this portentous day. If your allies are the men of fate from the spires of Feandil, that's one option. If they have the worshippers Moraine from Greydawn. If you have the warriors of Beatan and Dharma from Seracube and Avaneg. Now, we do have warriors from Avaneg, which means we will probably not want to send them against the warriors of Avaneg that Honoric is using. He might do that, but they're likely to be less willing to hurt their fellow citizens of Avaneg. So, Green Ridge and Tall Hill. The Tall Hill's over here. I think we need to guard the ford, take and hold the farm early. I don't remember anything in that. I don't remember making any major advances on this side of the map. I think I shall end here. Because it's a good narrative stopping point. And also, I've taken enough risks breaking into his camp and searching. And if I'm going to mess up the battle really badly, I'd rather, not have to redo that section. I know it's a couple of dice rolls, roll a 6+, roll a 7+. But just to simplify things, essentially. Right. There we are. This may be a shortish episode, but I did record a previous video, which I'm probably going to have to redo, actually, because I wasn't entirely happy with the quality. So there we have it. The first initial map of the battlefield. I believe as the battle progresses, we have the positions of units noted on the map. And can see how things progress. I'm tempted to export this map into map tools here and maybe put some tokens on for the different units and move things around, but we'll see how that goes. Alright, I'm going to end this one here. I hope you've all enjoyed this episode, even if it feels a little bit on the short side, and I'll look forward to seeing you all in the next one. I'll say goodbye for now and cheerio everyone. See you all soon.